quite a lot of people on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and it's kind of to help you guys understand kind of how to approach moving into UX and UI, and kind of how I did it. So first of all, there's a difference between UI and UX, and I think there's quite a fundamental difference. To be honest, having done both roles over the years, and we're all going to see these roles coming out about unicorns. Um, what kind of So I start, and I'll explain why I think there's a difference and why there kind of needs to be a difference, depending on the type of company that you work for. Obviously, that makes a big difference. So I started my career a while ago. So I started in magazines actually, and I come from a very graphic design background. So I used to really love taking photographs and doing all sorts of mad stuff in Photoshop. Um, and kind of did a graphic design degree, and that's where I kind of learnt my skills of visual design. And very 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 luckily, when I was finishing my course, I managed to get a design internship at Vogue magazine, and that was doing print stuff. Um, but then that was when the iPhone, I think it was the iPhone 3G came out, and people were really getting into apps. And Steve Jobs had just announced the new iPad, and things were kind of moving in that direction. And for my final university degree, what I did is I actually made a fashion magazine, but I did my dissertation on the future of fashion magazines. And at that time, I thought it was going to move. This was before Net-a-Porter, so I thought it was going to move in kind of like an e-commerce way. So I did this little cool app where you could look at different pictures and you shake your phone, and then it would break down into a sales thing. Um, and that kind of helped me land a job in Condé Nast full time once I'd finished my Vogue internship in Wide magazine. And that was, I'd kind of say, it was the first kind of like UX UI job kind of out there, kind of before the term was even coined in the industry. And that was taking the magazine and putting it onto an iPad. So that's kind of the way they thought the industry was moving at the time, and that was taking the actual visual design and practically redesigning it visually for a smaller screen. And that was not doing any coding. So that was before responsive websites. It was before even good prototyping things were out. So we used to take the magazine in InVision, not InVision, in InDesign, and we used to kind of design it like a print magazine. And Adobe had a tool which used Flash to do the interactions. And then when Apple kind of came there and said, "Oh, we're not using Flash anymore," that kind of threw the whole thing up, and we had to learn how to do interactions in HTML5 and all kinds of cool buzzwords around that time. And that was back in 2010. But what I'm trying to kind of get at here is to kind of show what I think UI is. So I'd class that role, although we did do interaction design, I'd class that role as a UI design. And I think UI design, in my definition of it, is it's like the polishing touches. It's the look and feel of the website. Effectively, it's the fonts, it's the images, it's the colors, it's all the character in a website. Um, and that's normally done by people who have a graphic design background, or people who are interested in photography, or people who are very visual in that manner. Um, so when I'd finished in the magazines, I was doing this visual design, I was doing a bit of interaction, and I really got into UX, and I thought, oh, UX is a cool term. Um, there were like these teams popping up everywhere, and I was lucky enough to go over to the BBC and be head of UX on bbc.co.uk in about 2000, 2012, 2011, something like that. And that was like one of the first responsive websites, um, making that, and that was a big shock for me, going from UI, and BBC were very hot at the time in UX. And I remember going there in the first 6 months. I think we did no visual designs. We took statistics from the website. We printed it out on post-its. We stuck it up on walls. We sketched ideas. We talked to customers. We did user testing in the field, and we basically did all of the all of the background information to making a great website. And I was not, coming from the design background, that was all new to me at the time. It was a massive learning curve, and it was something that I still appreciate to this day. And it kind of gave me an insight as to how research orientated UX actually is. And a lot of people in UX, or at the time, who were getting into that, weren't actually coming from graphic design backgrounds. So I knew a lot of people who were like interested in psychology, human computer action, more computing, to be honest, coming into the field. So they were very data heavy and very analytical, very love talking to users. And that's kind of where I first learned about the user centered design process, where you get ideas, you basically start by researching, because every single thing we design for has a problem at its core, and you need to research what the actual problem is, so you're actually designing for the right thing in the first place. Because a lot of people just go and design stuff and spend months and months and months designing websites and new apps and new cool things, and actually there's no problem that they're solving, which is why ultimately 99% of startups fail or businesses fail, because there's no actual problem there to be solved. And for people to spend money and actually want something that you're offering, there needs to be a problem. And that's what UX taught me most. By understanding the people who use it, you understand what problems they're facing and what they're trying to solve, and that's kind of where you can come in. So companies might be heading totally down the wrong track by not understanding the problem that they're trying to solve, or they think that their business values are something, but the users actually don't really care about that. They care about a smaller issue, which is actually much easier and much less costly to fix, but would solve a massive challenge from them. So that's kind of where I see a difference between UX and UI. I see UI as a much more visual kind of, it's kind of like a polish, but it's the end product, and it's added on at the end once all the research is there, once all the actual, the meat and the substance to what you're actually designing, all the thought has gone into it. That's why people need to work in teams. Like a UX designer, a lot of people think all they do is present wireframes, but that's kind of like the 1%. That's kind of like the very, very end product of all of this information, all this user testing, all of this research. And that's kind of the thing that then gets passed over to a UI design to make look amazing and kind of add the character to the website and add the personality in and add the emotion with the images. So that's why I see them very different. And depending on what background you have, so whether you're more visual, whether you're an artist, then go towards UI design. And if you're more analytical and you're more interested in research, go towards UX. And there are different skill sets. So like a lot of people in the industry, there's not that many tools, to be honest. The tools are very, very simple. It's more the thought process and the presenting ideas to stakeholders, which is the hard bit. But there's Sketch, which a lot of people use, which is like kind of like the modern day. We used to use Photoshop back in the day. It's a much better version for making websites. And UI designers can use Sketch. So if you're interested in going into UI design, I'd say learn that. But I'd also say learn the basics of the principles of design first. Like how to make things beautiful. And I think the one thing I learned about magazines was that spacing is really important. Getting mathematical grid perfection into your website is actually very important. Then you add the font in, which has the personality, and then you add the images later on. I mean, it's all well and good learn how to use Sketch, but once you learn how to fundamentally put a design together, that's the most important thing. And there are loads of places on the internet. I learned all my stuff from lynda.com. The amount of times I spent going through that website when I was in university, it kind of put me through it. That's where I watch videos on loads of things like photography, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot putting all this stuff together and going down the UI path. And then once you learn the basics of design, you learn the tool that you need, which is Sketch. You then start by making fake projects. Just go out, check a website. There's plenty of bad ones out there. Redesign a bank's website. Put it together, put it on Behance, and like. You don't need to work for big companies to be able to show your value in design. That's what I would say. I'd say make a portfolio by redesigning work, and don't try and do something complex. You don't need to make mad mad interactive designs. You need to, make it fundamentally understandable, usable, very, very simple. And sometimes they're the hardest to achieve. But that's what, and you just need a few examples in your portfolio, and then go after UI jobs. I'd stay away from UX UI jobs, to be honest, because a lot of the time the company won't really be set up or understand the value of each role, and you'll be you'll kind of be somewhere in between. But I mean, that might be good for an agency or somewhere that's really fast paced, but that's never. Um, it depends how you want to take your career, to be honest. And for UX designers, I mean, there's a lot more. There's a lot of really good courses out there on. You could use Sketch to do wireframes. The actual final product's really, really easy. You could use Exure to put together interactive prototypes. I really like InVision, so I team InVision with Sketch, which basically makes prototypes out of my Sketch documents. And how I wish I would have had that when I was in university. I spent at least 3 months trying to figure out how to code in Xcode to put together an app, when now I could probably do it in a couple of hours just using InVision and Sketch. How things have moved on. But yeah, learn how to use that tool. That's a couple of days' work. It's not that much that you need to put into it, because it's not that complex. The complexity is learning all about the user-centered design process, learn about the tools that you have, and what my top is. I've actually got a half an hour. It's a free course on my YouTube channel, so check that out, and that explains the UX design process and kind of everything you need to know to get started. So I'd say that's a good place to start. And then once you know all that, again, start doing fake projects and start getting up to speed. A portfolio, and then applying for UX specific jobs, and go for junior roles. You kind of want mentorship, one-on-one. And you really need someone to be there and check your work and help you out. The amount of mentorship I had from people within the magazine industry was unbelievable, and it really helped me. And yeah, and then you progress your career onwards. And yeah, I've got another video on YouTube about how to get a job in the industry, how to use LinkedIn to your advantage. So check that out. This is the first video. I might put together a couple more, depending on if it's useful or not. Please let me know in the comments below if you found this useful. Any other questions you want answering? I'm really just trying to help people get into the industry, and make the internet a much much more simple